Good morning, Kristara. It is Monday, and it is time for another weekly preview video. Everyone's getting some sweet little goodies this week, so that's kind of awesome. Every platform's getting a new class later on in the week. I won't tell you what until we get to the actual thing in the spoilers section, but some sick stuff for everybody. Let's dig right the heck in. So, starting on the PC mobile side, we've got event keys in Dhrak-Zum this time around. Dhrak-Zum, unfortunately, is kind of this mixed bag, and you're kind of going to have to decide for yourself if you want to spend the keys knowing what you might be able to get. So one of the things you might be able to get is Obsidius. So if you didn't craft Obsidius last week, where High King Iron Gut and Obsidius were both available in the Soulforge, he is there in event keys. That's super cool. So Obsidius, really great PvP troop, turning off all enemy traits on any 4-5 since he's stunning everybody. Super useful, great against life and death. Very decent damage as well, mana generation, super fun troop. However, if you are rolling them dice on event keys, you might also get Fallen Valdis, which unfortunately is pretty crap. Damage to all, exploding 3 Doom Skulls, which is kind of inconsistent, but then all of its fun mechanics are kind of based on the fact that the other team should be running Divines. So if the other team is running Divines, the damage boost is super minor and insignificant, but it does silence all of them. So if there's ever an event or ever a situation where you know you're fighting against a pure Divine team, Fallen Valdis might have some value there, but outside of that, she's pretty much valueless. She also gets this diseasing a random enemy when you match purples, which is kind of whatever. Other troops that are in there are Glaceon and King Bloodhammer, both of which are really nice Skull Convertery troops. Super Skull resistant on Glaceon. He also gains attack himself whenever he takes skull damage. He transforms yellows into blues, and then reds into Doom Skulls, which is insanely strong, and then freezes the strongest enemy. Rate this troop extremely highly, so if you don't have Glaceon, opening up event chests could be a way to go get him. And King Bloodhammer, similar type of dude. He's dealing 30 damage to 2 people, at least for me. And then he's also transforming all blue to Doom Skulls. So Doom Skull Converters, super strong, very high damage. If you're looking for like a Brown Day smashy kind of team, Glaceon and King Bloodhammer on the same team are always mixed very nicely with the Mountain Crusher, for instance. So these 3 troops, amazing to get out of event keys. This troop, not so much. So this is kind of like, you know, the Joker card in the deck of cards, if you will. So if you're opening up event keys, just make sure you have good luck, fortunately. The event this time around is a raid boss, so it's going to be fighting these kinds of folks. It's going to be Giant-D type troops, which is kind of interesting because the troop that we're getting this time around is Moira Cragheart for this event. So she looks like your standard, troop here, dealing 30 damage to a boss based on your ascensions, but then she's also converting green gems to Doom Skulls. So that's kind of crazy. Like, this actually means she could have value outside of this event, which is kind of weird. Her art is definitely very cool, so that's nice. But she's also doing double damage to giants in general, like for skull damage, I should say. So this makes her very attractive as an option for frontlining. I have her in this team without frontlining, just because I'm not very confident with the troops I have access to that I could keep her alive long enough. However, what's especially noteworthy about this is that normally when we do a raid boss type event, when you're looking at the fight, let's just pretend Zul's down there, you always have to kill down to Zul to make this worth it. With this troop, you are actually doing double damage to every troop along the way, and then you get there. So if you had some method of scaling her attack, for instance, this could be an interesting method of actually trying to tackle this event. I think that's going to be a little weird, a little inconsistent, and it's a little too all-in on a troop that's hard to protect. So I opted for this version. This is going to be an insane event, however, if all of these troops are kind of dependent on like skull spam. So this is either going to execute wonderfully and easily or be insanely frustrating if you're not able to kind of get what you want going on. I suspect this team will be totally fine. Just be extremely picky about what mana gems you match, but then once you start your matching, this thing should just convert itself into heaven, if you will, and just blow everything up. So I'll give you this event team in the description below if you want to check that out. Should be a fun week. Other things that we got is in the Glory Shop, we got a new troop. So the troop that we're getting, I don't think I actually picked him up yet, actually, is Cryshound. So Cryshound is a weird-ass dude. So he's having the enemy's armor and life, and then he just creates either 9 up to 13 blue gems. So this is actually really strong blue mana generation, which is pretty sweet. He's a beast construct type, which is also kind of weird. So as far as what he is, that's also a weird mix. And then he's gaining bonus brown mana, and he's also very skull resistant. So as a troop, he's very awkward and odd and interesting. Honestly, I'm a little interested in his use. He doesn't have any kind of like quicker start, so using him as a blue mana generator might be a little odd. However, I do think he is an interesting ass dude. So I'd recommend getting him. I think he'll be interesting to play around with. He's definitely going to have some value. Wouldn't necessarily say break the bank trying to get him ascended to Mythic or anything like I just did, but definitely an interesting kind of dude. So that's out there as well. The weapon that we're getting for the event this time, so if you go into the event shop and you spend up to tier 3, we're going to be getting this thing called Korag's Invention. So this is dealing damage to enemies boosted by Dhrak-Zum allies, and then it's doing a mix based on Dhrak-Zum allies. So this weapon itself is a yellow-red, so this doesn't necessarily seem to have any value for a traditional skull-smashing team for Guild Wars Day, for instance, unless you were building around King Bloodhammer specifically. The weapon itself doesn't have any fun upgrades as far as abilities, so there's nothing really all that interesting about the weapon itself. These teams, like a pure Dhrak-Zum team, is not all that interesting to me, admittedly. So I don't find too much value in this weapon personally. However, if you were trying to run this event where you had Moira up in the top slot, you might want to be using this weapon. However, you'll still have to figure out some way to keep her alive. But always recommend getting up to tier 3 in the event just to get the weapon just in case, because you never know. But that's the new weapon. In the Soulforge this time around, we've got kind of nothing super crazy, but we've got Tina 9000, of course. So Tina, as of my last tier list video, up for much debate. I'm sure a lot of people will be angry at me for that, but this is basically a super sniper kind of troop, and it's a little bit of an RNG kind of troop. But basically, Tina just does a crap ton of damage to 3 random enemies. So of course, if she hits the same enemy twice, that's pretty much a guaranteed kill in any kind of PvP context. So as far as straight up damage, she's insanely high. She's also extremely spell resistant, 50% spell reduction, so it's really hard to knock her down. And if she's ever in the top slot for God knows why, you'd be doing 50% of your armor to skull damage, so this piece could be very interesting as well. She's also gaining armor every time you cast her. So in terms of damage, very high. She's very survivable. However, if you do knock off her armor, then none of this skull stuff is all that interesting anymore. But just from a raw damage perspective, she's really good. So I think Tina is a very cool troop. She's definitely very lethal. A little bit random, but she's someone that you can just outright murder people with. So if you don't have Tina, I think it's worth trying to get her. As far as anything else in there, there's really nothing too crazy in here, so I wouldn't really recommend anything else as far as the troops go. From the weapons side, we have Fire and Ice. I wouldn't really recommend crafting this unless you're a collector. I crafted this because I'm a collector, but this is just doing damage to all, giving 2 life to all allies. When you boost it, it's kind of fun because it burns and freezes the enemy, and then it creates a red and a blue gem. It's a very fun thematic weapon, but as far as a good weapon, I wouldn't really rate it all that high. And of course it is red and blue. I think they had a lot of fun making this one. But nothing I would really recommend crafting. It's just out there. The other thing that's out there is Stone Slicer. So this is creating a mix of purple and brown. The weapon itself is purple, so it'll mix into itself. It's also mixing based on construct allies. So what's kind of fun about this is that the last troop that we just looked at, the new glory troop, Mr. Cryshound, he's also making a bunch of blue and he's a construct. So now we have 2 insanely strong construct mana generation tools in Stone Slicer and the Cryshound. They're not making mana that work well together per se, but this one's making purple and brown and Cryshound's making blue. So at least we have a lot of mana generation options for construct type troops. However, we're still kind of missing some other stuff. But Stone Slicer's out there. I think in terms of a mixed weapon, it's one of the better ones since it'll mix into itself, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend you go crazy trying to craft it unless you've got spare resources. But that's everything going on in the Soulforge. And now we enter into the spoilers section. So spoilers this time around, we're having a Battle Crasher all week. The Battle Crasher troop that we're going to be running into all day, every day, is just a Rego pirate. So nothing really all that scary or interesting. So Pirate's going to show up in all your fights all week, literally all week, starting today and ending at the end of the week. That's super random. When it comes to the Faction Assault event that's going to be on Tuesday, we've got the Sea of Sorrow. So this is my Sea of Sorrow team that I've been using, though this is something you can totally use. I'll put that code in the description for the video, but that's going to be a fun one to dig on through. As far as the pet event on Wednesday, it's a new pet called the Puppy Pirate. So Battle Crasher Pirate, new pet is Puppy Pirate, so why not? But the super fun thing that we've got is actually the new class. So the new class is the Stormcaller class, and if you saw my tier list video, you probably saw me crap on this class, but that was before they updated what it's going to do. And now this class is actually kind of interesting. So the class itself is Strix type, so now that we have a Strix hero type, the Storms tree is a little more interesting, and the Wind tree is slightly more interesting, but not really. But overall, we've actually got a Strix type troop, so mixed weapons that we had before that were mixing based on Strix will actually have a hero type that can go with it. Strix troops are actually kind of interesting, so I'm pretty interested to play around with this. However, what they changed about this class that now makes it not garbage is the third trait is Conjuring a Light Storm every single turn. So this is insanely strong. If you know any of my videos, you know that I love the Sun Spear and how much I love a Firestorm at the start of every turn. This is now a Light Storm at the start of every turn. So from a mana abuse and mana control perspective, this is actually really, really good. So I'm instantly, immediately interested in this class, kind of regardless of whatever the talent trees say at this point. Just to make a Strix type troop with this constant Light Storm is going to be very interesting. When you think of Strix that take yellow, Queen Xochi's out there, Taloka is out there, Harpy Mage is out there. A bunch of Strix are very yellow mana dependent, so this is going to be fun. The talent trees are less exciting, but not awful. So you're going to be able to self-cleanse yourself with the life tree. That's kind of noteworthy. That's pretty much it. In the Wind tree, unfortunately, the Wind tree is all garbage. However, you at least get a level 100 talent that's not total garbage. It's still bad, but it's not total garbage. All Strix getting one attack every turn. Unfortunately, the rest of the Wind tree is not all that interesting. But with the Storms tree, you're going to be able to get a Dust Storm at the start, which is not useful on this class, but would be useful on others. However, you do get Lightning Strike, which is going to get you 1 yellow explosion on every 4/5. And then you also get this Elemental Magic pumping thing in the event that that's ever useful. So the talents aren't going to help it a super amount. You'll get a little extra mana gem bouncing going on with Lightning Strike. You'll be able to self-cleanse yourself, so that's kind of fun. I'm very interested in this class now. I was not before, but this is definitely going to be an interesting one. The class weapon itself, I'd have to go glance at, but it's right here. It's doing true damage to an enemy, and if there's a storm, deal 15 true damage to all enemies, but then you remove the storm. This is very interesting and odd, because if you think about what this actually means, since you're always going to cause a light storm on your turn, this is basically a weapon that's basically keeping the storm benefit on your turn, and then if you cast this weapon, you'd be removing it for their turn, and then it would come back on your turn. This is a very weird and interesting mechanic. This is the first time I believe we've ever seen the option to remove a storm. So that's going to be very odd, very interesting. The amount of true damage that deals isn't insignificant. I mean, 15 to all, just randomly, and then you're already doing true damage to somebody with the initial cast. This is going to be a sneaky, weird, interesting kind of weapon that I think we can kind of mess around with. So that's out there. This class is now very interesting to me. I am going to have a fun time trying to place this on my own tier list. That should be fun. But that is everything on the PC, mobile, PlayStation, Xbox side of things. Let's check in with our Switchers. On the Switch side of things, you guys have Guild Wars. Yeah, Guild Wars time. Get those defenses set today, buy your Sentinels, get your attack teams coordinated, get it all set up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch my Guild Wars guide video. But it is Guild Wars for you guys, so I wish you all the best of luck. I'm very envious. Guild Wars is always a fun time. As far as the event keys for you guys have Bright Forest event keys. So if we look at Bright Forest, it is a weird mix of characters. So in Bright Forest, ignore... I'm not even sorting by Bright Forest, what the heck? In Bright Forest, you've got a weird mix of characters. So Suna is the mythic that's going to be in there. She's a very interesting scaling kind of troop. So she's stealing life from 2 people. She's also stealing 8 magic from other 2 people. So she's affecting everybody on the board in some capacity. This is allowing her to scale up and up and up. So in terms of that spell ability, it's actually pretty nice, but it doesn't have any loop potential, so that's not the most fun. She also has a very consistent Fairy Fire because it's casting off every red mana gem match. This doesn't have to be a 4 or 5, it just has to be red. So you'll be Fairy Firing a bunch of people. This does affect the actual ability here, so that's kind of fun. I would not go necessarily spending event keys to get Suna specifically. However, you probably might want some of these other troops. So Glitter Claw's out there. He's kind of fun. He's converting all blue into green and then Fairy Firing everybody. He's also enchanting himself whenever you match red gems, so that's kind of fun. So Glitter Claw's out there. He's only doing damage to 1 random troop, but just for a spell or a mana converter, converting blue into green, he is interesting. However, I don't use him nearly as much as I think he could theoretically be used. Queen Titania's out there, however, and she's insanely good. So she's Fairy Firing a random enemy on 4 or 5 matches, so you should be Fairy Firing most, if not all, of the other team if you have decent mana generation on your team. She's also doing a decent amount of damage to everybody, boosted by red enemies and allies by 4. So if you build a very red mana dependent lineup, this could get a decent amount of boost out of it. And then if you imagine you're Fairy Firing everybody on 4 or 5, she'll also be doing a lot of damage. If you'll happen to have Yao, which is another legendary, he pairs up with her extremely nicely with a Taipan, for instance, and a Flammifer and or a Sky Hero weapon. Just throwing that out there. But then she also gets an extra turn if there's 13 or more red gems. So in terms of like just raw damage potential, she's extremely good. If you're lucky enough to pull her early, I would strongly recommend building teams around her, as she's, from a pure damage perspective, just like so much better than most troops you'll get access to early on. So opening up event keys for those 3, kind of interesting. Tinseltail is a new troop that's only available in the chest this time around. So if you open up event chests, glory chests, VIP chests, all that fun stuff, Tinseltail might be in there. Tinseltail is kind of an awkward-ass troop. So he's giving all allies 4 magic no matter what, but then he also has a 50% chance to deal 25 damage to everybody, or another 50% chance to explode 8 random gems, and then another 50% chance to give all allies 25 life. So what this means is that sometimes you cast him and all he does is give everyone 4 magic and that's it. Sometimes you cast him and then he also explodes the board, does damage to everyone, and heals everybody. So these 3 spell effects all have their own 50% chance. So he's not super reliable, which makes him a little awkward. From a magic gaining perspective, 4 isn't like super insane that it's worth just putting him on a team anyway. So he's a little bit of an awkward troop to have, admittedly. From a traits perspective, there's nothing super amazing. However, he does Fairy Fire a random enemy when matching green. So he does take green himself. He does seem like him and Glitter Claw would be buds. But it's a little weird of a spell effect, admittedly. I think it's fun. I've used him on a team every now and then, just for kicks. If you'd have to slot him in, he is both a Fae and a Dragon, so you can kind of use him in different events. But I wouldn't rate him necessarily the strongest thing on the planet. Nothing too crazy. The other thing that's in there is the other new troop. So in the Glory Shop, you guys have access to Leprechaun, which is one of my best friends. He is exploding the board of the green gems and then boosted by your gold, I should say. The boosting piece really doesn't matter, honestly. Just by his base, if you have enough kingdom levels and stats, you should be getting a decent amount of green mana explosion right off the bat. But then he's empowered, and he's gaining bonus green mana. So what this means is that if you're running any kind of class that has a Storm start, so if you think of a Sunspear, a Titan, a Frost Mage, they all have a Storm start built into them, as well as a bunch of other classes like Archer and Sorcerer, and a bunch of others. If you have any method of creating a Storm at the start of a fight, and then you cast Leprechaun, the entire board is now going to look a lot like the color that you want that Storm to be. So this troop is actually incredibly high value. He's used all throughout the game. Speaking from the PC side of things, Leprechaun is still used in high-level teams all the time. So if there was ever a time to spend a lot of glory getting a troop all the way up to Mythic, now would be the time. Leprechaun is absolutely an amazing troop. I strongly, strongly recommend you guys go get yourself a Leprechaun, because he great. He great. In the Soul Forge for you guys, there is some stuff that's worth talking about. So the first thing that's in there is the Wild Queen, who is incredibly fun and incredibly dangerous, as her name would imply. So she's giving all wild folk allies 2 attack at the start of every turn. That's not so interesting or fun. She does summon a Bone Storm when an ally dies. So this is kind of a fun spell mechanic that's super scary because of what she does. So what she does is she steals a bunch of attack from a troop of your choosing, and then she gives it to the first person on your team. So if you're running somebody up top, they're going to be getting all of that attack. And then she creates a mix of 22 skulls and green gems. So this is a sick amount of mana, honestly. And what this means is that if you cast this and it works, it's amazing. You're going to win, pretty much. If you cast this and it works, you're going to win. And if you cast it and it doesn't work, you're probably not going to win because it summons a Bone Storm if you die. So if you can imagine you set up a bunch of skulls, none of them match, and you give up your turn, they're going to take all of those skulls and whack you with them. And then if you die, there's going to be a Bone Storm. So this is a troop that is extremely fun, extremely dangerous, extremely potent. I think she's worth crafting, admittedly. I have her rated up in the A tier. I don't regret that at all. You can be somewhat consistent with this because you just have to make sure that either there's a bunch of skulls or a bunch of green gems or potentially a bunch of both before you cast her, which means you want to be forcing green men on the board either with the Leaf Storm start, you want to be having other skull converters with her, you want some method of ensuring the board looks pretty safe to cast her. And as long as it does, it's super amazing. Another thing that you can do to try and protect yourself against this blowback, of course, is to steal attack from the first enemy in their lineup, which will mean even if it totally fails, the amount of blowback you'll take should be a lot less. Of course, the AI can't stop themselves from matching skulls, so you're a little safe from that point of view. However, depending on what you're doing, sometimes you don't steal quite enough attack and you'll still end up hurting yourself quite a lot, but that is a little method of using her to protect yourself a little bit. So I would recommend go getting the Wild Queen. I love her. I use her all the time. Another person that's out there, normally I don't recommend legendaries, however, Web Spinner is very fun and interesting. He does triple skull damage to anyone he hits because he inflicts web when he first hits them, and then he does triple skull damage to them because of it. And he deals damage to everybody when you cast him, and then creates 9 green gems. So in terms of his spell ability, this is not super interesting. It's not awful, but it's not super interesting. This is what makes him super interesting. So if you don't have a Web Spinner, he is one of the most lethal troops. He is used all the time, late game, early game. If you snag him early game, he'll definitely kill anyone you hit with him. Late game, he still pretty much kills anyone you hit with him. So, super lethal troop. Would I recommend you waste diamonds to get him? That's a good question. I think that's going to be a personal call. But he is very valuable. So if you feel like picking up a Web Spinner, he is also out there. I thought I would mention it. The other thing that's out there, so if you happen to start playing before they offer Trickster Shot, Trickster Shot's out there, and this is also a very fun weapon to grab. So this is actually eliminating all armor from an enemy and then dealing some damage. So it's essentially true damage. But then you're also gaining all the magic for all the armor that you hit on a 3-to-1 boost ratio. So if they had 100 armor and you hit them with this bow, you're basically giving yourself 33 magic, which means the next time you shoot this bow at somebody, you'll be doing, like, when at least in my instance, like 63 damage instead of 30 damage. So this weapon can be insanely great because it does scale with the event. So if you're in an event where all the enemy troops are like level 300 and they have like 300 attack and 300 health and 300 armor, this dude's going to be able to just peel off all that armor and then start to be doing really, really high amounts of damage to like match the other team. So pretty much Trickster Shot, if you're running it, you never want to run it in the top slot. It's something you want to kind of put underneath other troops. But this weapon is very fun, very interesting. I would say if you missed it when it was available for you guys not that long ago, definitely worth picking up. It is a very good weapon to go get. But now into the spoilers section for you guys. So spoilers for you guys, you also have a Battle Crasher all week with the troop type Pirate. Not troop type, just the troop. This guy, Pirate. He'll be in all your fights for some reason, so enjoy that. He's going to be out there. As far as the Faction Assault event on Tuesday, you guys are going to be having All-Seeing Eye. This was the first delve that I actually got up to 500 myself, so it is kind of a fun one. This is the team that I was using. It's kind of funny. I didn't realize I was using Leprechaun on it before, but you can either be using Leprechaun there. I more historically use Possessed King in there. But this team will be insanely effective. You have a way of scaling Iron Guts attack, and then you'll also just be doing this. So that's kind of fun. I need to double check to see if you even have Iron Gut on the Switch. I bet you don't. But I will. You guys will have that going on Tuesday. On Wednesday, there is a pet rescue for Skullbeak. So Skullbeak's a new pet. That's kind of fun. That's whatever. But for the new class on Friday, so you guys are getting a new class on Friday, and the new class that you guys are getting is, drumroll please, the Shaman class. So a quick overview of the Shaman class is that they're pretty interesting. So all Tauros are getting a 50% mana start. The class itself is a Tauros, so you'll be getting 50% mana start, and everybody else on your team that is a Tauros will also be getting 50% mana start. And then as far as trees go, they've got an interesting mix of stuff. They're not the worst, but they're not the best, admittedly. There's nothing in here that screams amazing, but there's nothing in here that screams awful either. So what's fun about the forest tree is that you get access to Root Trap here at the start, which is kind of fun. So you'll entangle an enemy at the start of battle. You'll also be able to start with a Leaf Storm, which is also very fun. You can also choose to start with a Light Storm if that tickles your fancy. But then you also can heal everybody on your team by 2 every 4 or 5 match. I generally opt for the Root Trap, but that's also out there as another option if you'd like. The War Tree is generally just kind of like, how can I build up my attack in some capacity? You will be able to enrage yourself on 4 or 5 gems. You'd have to pick that over bonus yellow mana, but that can be pretty fun. Enraging is a very strong ability to do, which would also imply you're running your troop at the top slot. And then there's really nothing all that interesting down here. All Tauros gaining 1 attack at the start of every turn will at least offer some value getting this class to 100, but admittedly that's not all that much. So it's kind of interesting in the sense that you do get 50% mana start, you do get Root Trap, you do have the ability to start with a Leaf Storm, which is pretty rare. So if you combine this class with Leprechaun, for instance, that is still, to this day, the best way to get green mana at the start of a fight. There is no consistent way to get green mana right at the start of a fight because there is no converters at this point in time on any platform that will switch things to green. So normally the way you try and get a green team started is you have Leprechaun on it, and then you pop him when you've got a Leaf Storm running. So this will be yet another class that you can use for that, if you so choose. So this class overall, pretty bad, well, not pretty bad, pretty good, not terrible, not bad, not amazing, but it is fun, it is new. Since it's a Tauros type, you know, it's got other abilities with it. The new Fire Ruby staff that comes with it is... everyone seems to want to love this weapon, and I don't personally love it. So it's not the worst thing in the world. And I think when they see this, it kind of gets them all jonesing, like it gets them all excited in the pants. I don't think it's really all that special. So it's giving all allies 2 to all skills when you cast it. This part's not all that crazy. The boost ratio on the Fire Ruby staff is 3 to 1 based on your attack, life, and armor. So this is very emblematic of Tauros troops in general. There's a handful of troops that do this kind of thing. So Ketris does this, Chief Stronghorn does this. They're like scaling based on all of your attack, your life, and your armor. So if you have a method of boosting your stats a crap ton, this weapon will have a okay boost on it, but it's doing scatter damage. So this kind of reduces its potency. Scatter damage is doing a split of that damage across all the troops on the other side. So unless you scale this a lot, and you're not really going to be able to cast it all that much without any effect. When you upgrade it, there's really nothing all that crazy in here. It enrages yourself and enchants yourself. It burns the first enemy. It deals 5 scatter damage. This thing, from its upgrades, is really nothing too crazy, but there's no loot potential in this. The amount of scaling you would need to make this be super crazy and dangerous is not that easy to do. So I don't rate this weapon super amazingly. It's not the worst, but just ignore this all allies gaining 2 skills thing. Don't get tempted by this. This is not the reason you'd want to be using this. You would theoretically want to be using this because of the boost ratio and trying to get your damage to scale really, really high just based on that. So it's out there. That's coming with the class, but that is new for you guys on Friday. So have fun with that. Faux show. And that is everything for everybody. I do want to mention real quick, however, that I have started a speedrunning community for Gems of War. So I strongly recommend check out the official forums. I will put a link in the description. But we are going to be starting with pet rescue battles. So if you are at all interested, check out the forum, check out the post. We are going for fastest world record times on clearing all 8 fights in pet rescue. So if you think that sounds fun, then absolutely check out that thread. I think it's going to be amazing. We've already got Tacit doing it, I'm doing it, JZG is doing it. So we've got a handful of folks already starting that, but anyone can participate. There's an official leaderboard that I'm going to be maintaining. Everyone has to have video proof. It's going to be super fun. It's already been very eye-opening to see what teams people use. So absolutely check that out. Of course, I'll be having more videos, more streams, all that other good stuff. But that is all going on for everybody. So this is Key Lime signing out. Make sure you like, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. Okay, bye.